At his lavish 70th birthday party, billionaire Richard Whitmore smiled for the cameras, then, without warning, slapped his daughter across the face. The ballroom froze. Champagne glasses trembled, and in front of 200 witnesses he roared, "You're a disgrace to the family name Harper." That single strike didn't just bruise her skin, it cracked open a lifetime of lies, leading to secrets buried for 35 years. Before we begin, if you believe that no truth should ever stay buried, and no woman deserves to be silenced by power, make sure to subscribe. It's free, and helps us share more stories from RevengeAmy. My name is Harper Whitmore, and until that night, I thought I knew exactly who I was. The eldest daughter of a powerful man. A quiet disappointment wrapped in designer heels. I was 34, an art restorer in Chicago, the kind of woman who smelled like varnish and dusted frames, while everyone else in my family smelled like money and legacy. My father, Richard Whitmore, had built an empire of glass towers and marble floors. I built silence. That night, during his lavish 70th birthday celebration at the Ravenswood Country Club, I learned what silence costs. The chandeliers burned like suns, violins hummed, champagne flowed. Then my father raised his glass, smiled for the cameras, and struck me. The sound cracked through the ballroom like a gunshot. The world froze. My cheek burned under the weight of every flashing light. "You're a disgrace to the family name Harper," he thundered. "I'm cutting you from the $230 million will." For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Then the whispers began. Did he just? Oh my God, he slapped her. Phones lifted. People grinned behind their flutes of Dom Perignon. I stood there, mascara trembling on my lashes, every inch of me exposed. "Dad, please," I managed to choke out. "This isn't the place." He leaned closer, his cologne sharp and suffocating. "This is exactly the place. Maybe now you'll finally learn your worth." "Nothing." He smiled, lifted his glass again, and the crowd gave a hesitant applause. Half confusion, half cruelty. My stepmother, Vivian, flawless in an emerald gown, touched his arm. "Richard, enough," she whispered, but her voice quivered. Not with sympathy, but with fear. My brother, Cole, the golden heir, looked at me with a smug mix of pity and victory. "Harper, just leave," he murmured. "You're making it worse." Making it worse. As if I'd started any of it, I grabbed my clutch and walked out. The marble floor seemed to stretch forever as I pushed through the crowd of glittering strangers. Outside, snow fell softly over Chicago, muting the city's noise. I stood there, breath trembling, cheeks stinging, mascara bleeding down my gloves. That slap wasn't just skin on skin. It was 34 years of resentment compressed into one brutal moment. I'd never wanted his empire, only his respect. And now, in front of 200 witnesses and 1,000 lenses, he'd stripped me of both my dignity and my name. By the time I reached home, the video titled "Billionaire Father Slaps Daughter at 70th Birthday Party" had gone viral. Millions of views. My humiliation trending. I locked the door, slid down the wall, and screamed until my voice broke. In the reflection of the window, I barely recognized myself. The bruise darkening along my jaw, the woman staring back, both broken and free. "You're free now," I whispered. "You're free. But freedom shouldn't feel this hollow. It shouldn't taste like blood and cold air." That night, as snow piled outside and my phone kept buzzing with headlines and mockery, I thought the worst had already happened. I was wrong. Because when the knock came the next morning, 3 precise, deliberate knocks, it wasn't the press. It was the truth, waiting on the other side of my door. The next morning I woke to silence. No calls from my father, no messages from anyone pretending to care. Only the faint hum of the city below my apartment, and the hollow ache beneath my ribs. I'd spent most of the night replaying that slap. His ring flashing in the chandelier light, the shockwave of shame that had followed. I thought nothing could ever surprise me again. Then came the knock. 3 sharp, deliberate taps. Not the impatient rhythm of a reporter or a delivery man. It was the kind of knock that belonged to people who never had to knock twice. I hesitated, heart thudding. Who is it? A calm female voice answered. Miss Whitmore. We're here on behalf of your biological father. My coffee cup slipped from my fingers, shattering across the counter. Biological father. I opened the door just a few inches. 3 people stood there, like they'd stepped out of a courtroom drama. A tall woman with silver-streaked hair pulled into a perfect bun, flanked by 2 men in charcoal suits. The woman's eyes were steady, assessing. She handed me a business card. Judith Blackwell, Senior Partner, Blackwell and Hartman LLP. May we come in? Her voice was gentle but firm, the kind of tone that didn't really ask permission. I nodded and stepped aside. My apartment, small and cluttered with half-finished art pieces, suddenly felt too exposed, too personal. Judith sat at my kitchen table, folding her hands. These are my colleagues, Mr. Reeves and Mr. Chan, she said, introducing the men. Then, turning back to me, we represent Mr. Magnus Carver. The name meant nothing. I frowned. Who? She inhaled slowly. Your biological father. I laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. You've got the wrong person. My father's name is Richard Whitmore. Unfortunately, he's still very much alive and probably yelling at CNN right now. Judith exchanged a glance with the younger man, Mr. Chan, who opened a briefcase and carefully placed a thin folder on the table. My name, Harper Whitmore, was printed neatly on the tab. This file, Judith said, sliding it toward me, contains records from the Portland Police Department. A missing child case from June 1990. Female infant, 6 months old. Name Leah Carver. The name hit the air like a ghost. That's not me, I said quickly. Judith's gaze softened. Your DNA says otherwise. The room tilted. I think you should leave, I whispered instead. She reached into her bag and pulled out a photograph. A young couple stood in a park, holding a baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. The man had dark skin and green eyes. The woman was fair, her smile kind, the kind of smile that made strangers trust her. This was taken 2 weeks before the kidnapping, Judith explained quietly. The bracelet on the baby's wrist. Does it look familiar? I stared at the photo. The baby wore a small silver bracelet engraved with a tiny train engine. My stomach twisted. I looked down at my own wrist. The same bracelet. No, I whispered. My father gave me this. He said it was a family heirloom. Judith's voice dropped, gentle but unflinching. It was. Just not his family's. For a moment I couldn't breathe. The floor seemed to fall away. My father, the man who had humiliated me in front of the world, wasn't my father at all. Judith continued, her words precise and devastating. The FBI reopened the case 3 months ago after a DNA match appeared in a genealogy database. That match was you, Harper. Or rather, Leah. My lips trembled. You're saying Vivian, my stepmother, kidnapped me? Yes, Judith replied softly. Vivian Whitmore matched the age-progressed composite of the suspect the police had in 1990. She and Richard falsified adoption papers through a closed agency in Mexico. They paid a clerk to backdate the documents. Mr. Chan opened another folder and produced a birth certificate. My real birth certificate. Your biological mother was Eleanor Carver, he said quietly. A school teacher. Your father, Magnus, is an aerospace engineer. He spent 35 years searching for you. My throat closed around a sob I refused to let out. Why me? Judith paused. After 3 miscarriages, Vivian was desperate. She told people she was adopting discreetly. But it wasn't adoption, it was theft. The older man, Mr. Reeves, finally spoke, his voice like weathered oak. Your nanny at the time, Maria Santos, confessed on her deathbed that she was paid $50,000 to look away for 5 minutes. She believed it was a private adoption, not a kidnapping. By the time she realized the truth, she was too afraid to come forward. I pressed a trembling hand to my mouth. Oh my God! Judith unfolded a police report, yellowed with age, stamped case reopened. Your biological parents never stopped searching. Mr. Carver updated his will every year, leaving a place for his daughter in case she was ever found. She looked directly into my eyes. That daughter is you. Silence flooded the room, heavy and unreal. Then Mr. Reeves added quietly, Mr. Carver's estate is valued at over $2 billion. But that's not why he sent us. He doesn't care about the money. He just wants to see his child again. Tears blurred my vision. My mind refused to catch up with the words. $2 billion. 2 fathers. 2 lives. 1 stolen. 1 built on lies. Judith's tone softened, almost maternal. He's waiting downstairs, Harper. If you're ready, he'd like to meet you. I stared at her. He's here. She nodded. He flew in last night. He didn't want to waste another day. The ticking of the wall clock filled the silence between us. My reflection in the kitchen window looked pale, foreign. Who was she, the woman in the glass? Harper? Leah? Someone in between? I wiped my tears and whispered, okay. The elevator ride down felt endless. My heart hammered in my ears. The 3 lawyers stood quietly beside me, their presence both comforting and suffocating. When the doors slid open, morning light spilled into the lobby, blinding and pure. Near the entrance stood a man in a dark gray coat. Tall, composed, skin the same warm tone as mine. His hair was silvered at the temples, his posture both strong and fragile. When his eyes met mine, I recognized the green from the photograph. Clear and trembling with 35 years of longing, he didn't rush toward me. He simply whispered, voice cracking under the weight of decades. Leah! Something inside me shattered. I think so. I managed to say that. He took one hesitant step forward. You still have it, the bracelet? I looked down, the tiny silver train glinting softly in the light. You gave me this? He nodded. Your mother picked it out. She said you loved the sound of trains. His hand covered his mouth as a sob broke free. For a man who'd built an empire, he suddenly looked heartbreakingly human. I wore the matching one every day, he whispered. Every single day, hoping I'd see you wearing yours again. I didn't realize I'd moved until I felt his arms around me. Solid, trembling, real. He smelled faintly of cedar and rain. Home, I thought. This is what home feels like. For the first time since that awful night, I felt safe. When we finally pulled apart, he wiped his eyes and smiled through tears. Your mother, she would have loved to see you. She passed 5 years ago. But she never stopped believing you were alive. The words hit harder than the slap ever did. She's gone. I whispered. He nodded, his voice breaking. But she left something for you. Letters. Journals. Even the nursery, she never let me change it. Every birthday she'd leave a gift inside. She said someday you'd come home to open them. My chest ached. Tears streamed down my face unchecked. That morning, standing in the arms of the man who had spent half his life searching for me, I realized freedom doesn't always come from walking away. Sometimes it comes from being found. And for the first time I understood everything I thought I'd lost the night before. The family, the name, the legacy had never really been mine to begin with. But what waited ahead finally was. The elevator doors slid open with a quiet chime, spilling golden light into the marble lobby. My palms were damp, my heart stumbling over itself. I'd spent my whole life being told I was a Whitmore, polished, restrained, and replaceable. But as I stepped out, I felt that identity begin to crumble like old paint. He was there. A tall man stood near the glass doors, the morning sun tracing silver threads through his dark hair. His skin held the same warm undertone as mine, the first reflection of belonging I'd ever seen. And then those eyes, green, gentle, trembling with 35 years of grief. When he saw me, he froze. The air between us thickened with disbelief and fragile hope. Leah? He whispered. as though saying the name might break the spell. My throat tightened. I think so. He took a slow step closer. You still have it, the bracelet? I looked down. The tiny silver train on my wrist glimmered under the light. You gave me this? I asked, voice shaking. He nodded, his lips trembling into a half-smile. Your mother picked it out. She said you loved the sound of trains. The lobby blurred as tears filled my eyes. The man who'd spent half his life searching for me now stood inches away, carrying both strength and sorrow in his stance. He reached out, hesitated, then pulled me into his arms. And just like that, the years of emptiness cracked open. He smelled faintly of cedar and rain, like home after a storm. I clung to him, the sobs breaking free from somewhere deep, ancient, and starving for love. We stayed like that, suspended between time and truth. When we finally stepped apart, he brushed his tears with the back of his hand, his smile unsteady. Your mother, he began, voice low and reverent. She would have loved to see you. She passed 5 years ago, but she never stopped believing you were alive. The words hit harder than my father's slap, sharper than any betrayal. She's gone, I whispered. He nodded. But she left things for you. Letters, journals, even your nursery. She never let me change it. Every birthday she'd place a little gift inside. She said someday you'd come home to open them. A sound escaped me, not quite a cry, not quite a breath. I covered my face, shaking, grief pouring through fingers that had never known a mother's touch. Magnus, my father, gently took my hands away, his eyes glistening. She was hope, Harper. The kind of hope that never dies. She used to say, love isn't measured by how long you wait, but by how you keep believing when everyone else stops. For the first time, I didn't feel lost. I felt found. That morning, in a lobby that smelled of marble and memory, I stopped being Harper Whitmore. I became Leah Eleanor Carver, the daughter of a woman who had kept a light burning for 35 years. 2 weeks later, Justice arrived wearing navy jackets and steel cuffs. I was sitting in Magnus' car across the street from the Ravenswood Country Club, the same place where my humiliation had gone viral, where my so-called father had stripped me of my name. The snow had melted, but the cold still clung to the glass. Judith's text flashed on my phone. It's happening. Stay in the car. Through the windshield, I saw the scene unfold like a silent movie. Richard Whitmore, immaculate as ever in his crisp white polo, was laughing with his business partners, the very men who once toasted to my disgrace. Vivian, wrapped in pastel silk, stood beside him, her diamond bracelet catching the light, as if nothing in her world could ever fall apart. Then the sound came, engines, doors slamming, the synchronized rhythm of federal authority. Black SUVs rolled in, and the letters FBI blazed across a sea of Navy windbreakers. Golf clubs clattered. Mimosas froze midair. And for the first time, I saw Richard Whitmore's confidence fracture. 10 agents stepped forward, voice sharp and commanding. Richard Whitmore. Vivian Whitmore. You're under arrest for the kidnapping of Leah Carver 35 years ago. Gasps rippled through the terrace. Someone dropped their phone. Someone else started recording. It was poetic symmetry, the same crowd that had filmed my humiliation now capturing theirs. This is insane, Richard barked, stepping back. I raised her. She's my daughter. I whispered through the car window so softly that only I could hear it. No, you stole me. Vivian's composure shattered. Mascara streaked down her cheeks as she reached for him. We just wanted a child, she cried, her voice breaking under the weight of 35 years of lies. I loved her, but love built on theft isn't love. It's possession. As the agents cuffed them, the crowd's curiosity turned into something cruel, the same kind of fascinated cruelty that had once been aimed at me. People whispered, snapped photos, filmed. The perfect Whitmore legacy, now exposed as a crime scene. Richard's eyes found mine through the chaos. For the first time, there was no arrogance, no power, just something close to regret. His lips moved, forming 2 silent words. I'm sorry that I turned away. Beside me, Magnus placed a steady hand over mine. You don't have to watch, he said softly. I do, I whispered. They took 35 years from you and from me. I need to see how it ends. The agents guided Richard and Vivian into separate cars. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. Somewhere in the noise I heard a woman say, "Guess money really can't buy everything." She was right. That day the world watched the Whitmores fall, but for me it wasn't vengeance. It was closure. Because sometimes justice doesn't come quietly. It arrives in daylight, with sirens singing and truth finally breaking free. The world called it the Whitmore scandal of the century. Headlines screamed, anchors whispered, and strangers online decided what kind of daughter I was. But I wasn't anyone's daughter anymore. Not the Whitmores, not their carefully crafted lie. A week after the arrest, Magnus asked quietly, "Would you come home with me? Just for a while." Home. The word felt foreign. The next morning we drove north. The highway curved along the Oregon coast, the air thick with pine and salt. I watched waves crash against the cliffs, wild and endless, and wondered if my mother had stood here too, looking out, waiting for a child that never came back. When we reached the house, I didn't know whether to cry or breathe. It wasn't a mansion like Richard's marble fortress. It was warm, wooden, weathered by time. Lavender grew along the porch. Wind chimes danced with the ocean breeze. And when Magnus opened the front door, the scent of salt and old paper drifted out, soft and familiar, as if the house itself exhaled my name. "This," he said quietly, "is where your mother kept waiting." Inside, time had stopped. The floral wallpaper had faded, but not the care behind it. The rocking horse in the corner was still painted pale yellow. On the fridge, a photograph of a laughing baby me was taped beside a list titled Leia's Favorite Songs. My knees went weak. She kept it all? Magnus nodded. Every birthday she put a gift in your room. Every year, she told me. When she comes home, I want her to feel like she never left. He reached for a small wooden box on the mantel and handed it to me. The latch creaked as I opened it. Inside were dozens of envelopes, tied with a faded blue ribbon. Each one was addressed in delicate cursive, "To my Leia, for when you come home." My hand shook as I opened the first. The paper was yellowed, the ink slightly smudged. "My sweet girl, if you ever find this, know that not a day passes without me believing you're still out there. When I hear a train whistle, I imagine you laughing. When the rain hits the window, I imagine you sleeping safe somewhere." Tears blurred the words. I reached for another. "Your father built you a toy chest. He polishes it every year on your birthday. We never stop celebrating you." My vision broke into salt and light. I pressed the letter to my chest, sobbing so hard it felt like my ribs would crack open. All the years of silence, all the nights I thought I didn't belong, they were answered in ink and love. Magnus knelt beside me, his own eyes wet. "She was extraordinary," he whispered. "When the police told us the trail was cold," she said, "hope doesn't expire." I looked around the room, the soft colors, the toys untouched, the ghosts of lullabies still echoing between the walls. "I missed her whole life," I said. Magnus shook his head gently. "No. She made sure you didn't. Every word here, this is her life. And now it's yours too." As the sun dipped below the horizon, I read until my tears ran dry. Each letter was a heartbeat, a bridge over time. And for the first time since the truth tore my world apart, the hollow inside me began to fill with lavender sea air and the quiet, unbreakable love of a mother who never stopped believing I'd come home. The courtroom smelled like polish and fear. Every seat was filled, every camera waiting. Outside, protesters and reporters shouted my name, or what they thought was my name. But I wasn't Harper Whitmore anymore. That name belonged to the lie. When the clerk called, "Miss Carver, please take the stand," the room tilted for a second. Then I stood, steady, calm, heels clicking against the marble floor that had once belonged to my father's empire. Richard sat at the defense table, silver hair combed neatly, arrogance peeled away. Vivian looked small beside him, her hands trembling in her lap. When our eyes met, I saw not monsters, but the hollow shells of people who'd built their world on stolen truth. The clerk adjusted his glasses. "State your name for the record." I took a deep breath. "Leah Eleanor Carver." A silence rippled through the courtroom, a living, heavy silence, like the world had paused to listen. The prosecutor nodded gently. "Miss Carver, can you tell the court what you remember about your upbringing?" I looked straight ahead. I remember being told that love had conditions, that affection had to be earned, that obedience was worth more than honesty. My voice trembled but grew stronger with each word. I used to believe that was normal, but now I understand that wasn't love. That was control. Vivian broke first. Her shoulders shook as she whispered, "I'm sorry, Harper." I turned to her. "My name is Leah." The judge's pen stopped moving. Even the air seemed to still as I went on, feeling my mother's words rise inside me like breath. "You trained me to be afraid of failing you. You told me that without your name I'd be nothing. But you were wrong. I may have been stolen, but you couldn't steal who I truly am." Richard shifted, his jaw tightening. "I wanted to give you a better life," he snapped suddenly. His voice breaking, the gavel slammed. "Mr. Whitmore, you will remain silent," the judge warned, but I didn't flinch. I looked straight at him, the man who destroyed and defined me all at once. "You didn't give me life," I said quietly. "You stole it." For a moment, the great Richard Whitmore had nothing to say. He just sank back into his chair, staring down at the table like the weight of his empire had finally landed on his shoulders. When I stepped down from the stand, the cold air outside hit me like mercy. Magnus was waiting near the steps, his hand open, his eyes soft. "You did well," he said. That I shook my head, slipping my hand into his. "No," I whispered. "I finally did right." And as we walked out of the courthouse, I felt the name Leah Eleanor Carver settle on my tongue like truth, heavy, whole, and finally mine. 6 months after the verdict, the world had already moved on. News anchors had new scandals to dissect, and the internet had found fresh outrage to devour. But for me, time had slowed, not in grief but in quiet rebirth. Richard and Vivian Whitmore were sentenced to life in federal prison for kidnapping, fraud, and obstruction of justice. The empire they built on deception crumbled overnight. "The Whitmore dynasty ends in chains," the headlines read. But I didn't feel triumph. I felt release. People kept asking if I planned to take revenge, to claim what was owed. But I didn't want their empire. I wanted peace. I sold my Chicago apartment, every inch of it tainted by memories of who I used to be. Magnus offered everything. A trust fund, a home by the sea, even a seat on his company's board. But I said no. "I need to build something myself," I told him. "Something honest." So I returned to Portland, the city where my life had been stolen and where I chose to begin again. I rented a small brick studio by the water, its windows catching the morning light. The scent of wood, varnish, and ocean air filled the space. And for the first time, it didn't feel like isolation. It felt like purpose. I called the workshop Eleanor's Hands. Every brushstroke, every repair, every piece of worn furniture I brought back to life carried her spirit, patient, kind, and unbreakable. "She fixed everything," Magnus told me one afternoon, watching as I polished an antique desk. "Broken toys, broken chairs, broken hearts." I smiled faintly. Then I guess I inherited that from her. That desk, the mahogany one I had once restored for Richard's office, now sat in the corner of my workshop. Magnus had bought it from the estate auction, insisting, "It should stay where it belongs, with you." First I wanted to burn it, but then I realized it no longer represented him. It represented me and the woman I had become, someone who turned pain into purpose. Every evening before closing, I light a candle beside the box of letters my mother left me. One, her last, has become my mantra. If you ever find your way home, my darling girl, remember, your life didn't start with what was stolen. It starts with what you choose to rebuild. And that's exactly what I'm doing. Because I'm not Harper Whitmore anymore. I'm Leah Eleanor Carver, daughter of love, survivor of deceit, and restorer of all things broken. One quiet afternoon, sunlight poured through the workshop windows as Magnus handed me a small velvet box. Inside lay the matching silver bracelet, the one he'd worn for 35 years. I think, he said softly, they should be together again. I clasped it next to mine, the cool metal warming against my skin. Two halves of a promise finally hold. I'm not Harper Whitmore. I'm Leah Eleanor Carver. And though my story began with lies and loss, it ends here, in truth, in forgiveness, and in the gentle hum of a workshop by the sea, where healing sounds like love. What part of this story touched your heart the most? Tell RevengeAmy in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt life stories.